Welcome, everybody. It's Thursday Night Live. We have Charlie Mitchell from Pondering Christianity. Charlie, welcome. How are you doing?
What's up? Doing good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, we're going to have a good one tonight. We got some great questions tonight. Say hello if you're joining us. I got my sparkling water, as always. My treats tonight are going to be, I'm going with some Teddy Grahams. So have some fun. Let us know that you're here. Say hello. Steven, man, it's good to see you. Hey, I'm glad you can make it tonight. I know there's some other people that were excited to jump in and ask some questions tonight. Charlie, why don't you give us a rundown of Pondering Christianity for those who are just getting introduced to you. I know we've done a few of these and had great conversations, but give us an introduction to you, Pondering Christianity, and then also kind of what this conversation is going to look like tonight.
Yeah, so for those of you that are new to Pondering Christianity and everything that we're doing here, essentially we're looking to ask the hard questions of Christianity, as well as get into kind of a devil's advocate position for those positions. The reason we do that is because I find that it's extremely beneficial to my faith, as well as helping evangelize to other people, such as atheists or perhaps someone coming from a different religion or agnostic. It really helps kind of walk those people down the path of understanding why you have the hope that you do. And you know, we can find that directly within the Bible. That's exactly the practice we should be using when it comes to our faith. So that's the goal of Pondering Christianity, is ultimately to try to provide a conversation that furthers this apologetic topic. But ultimately, my particular approach is trying to bring it down to a more simplistic level, so that way my goal is that everybody in the room can kind of follow the conversation, and it gets super deep at times. But I really want to keep it as simple as I can. I think that's what Jesus tried to do with his parables. And so I try to walk that path and ultimately bring that approach to apologetics to bring people along.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love how you make things simple. I love your videos that you create on your YouTube channel as well. We'll put a link in there in the comments. Robert, good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. I know you've been busy lately. But it's good to see you tonight. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys had a good men's group last night. I know you guys were doing that too. Hey, help me out, guys. I'm trying something new, kind of testing out some Facebook features. I have a poll I want to put up for you. We're going to be talking about anxiety this coming Sunday at Freedom. If you don't go to Freedom, this week's a good week to check it out. And so I want to know your anxiety levels. I put a poll up here. Would you please vote in this poll? And I don't know if it just popped up or not, but I'm going to see if I can get some real-time results. So here it is. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you on the peace spectrum? 1 to 2, you're about to go Tiger King Joe Exotic on somebody. Like, it's just been a terrible day. 1 to 2. 3 to 5, vote. Today was just not a fun day. 6 to 9, today was a good day. Or 10, you're a liar. All right, so where are you on the peace spectrum today? And if you're looking for the 5, I see some of you guys voting, and you're like, well, I want a 5 in the middle. You can't. You gotta pick one. So Charlie, where would you say you are on the peace spectrum? I know I didn't even prep you for this question today. Where are you at, man?
Well, I'm maybe a 4.
You're
a
about
5.
4. Not a fun day. I know. Just for me personally, while we're going to be talking about, I've had just dealing with some anxiety. And in many ways, didn't even know that's what I was dealing with. I was kind of tired in just dealing with some different emotions, and then kind of sitting down and kind of working through. It's like, wow, actually, that's anxiety. All right, so I see 3. I got some of you. 3 of you is a good day. Somebody else is in that 3 to 5 range. Good. I'm glad no one's going to go Joe Exotic on somebody. That's good. That's good.
Have you watched that? Have you watched that?
I did. I made it through.
That's
Um,
crazy, dude.
and I was just very intrigued. I was like, how have I not heard about any of this before? Like it was all brand new, and I didn't do any spoilers. So um,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's crazy. That's about the only Netflix like series that I've watched in quarantine. I haven't watched much of anything else. All right, keep voting. Keep voting. Let me see if I want to bring that up on my phone because I just want to take a look at that as well. Um, all right, so we have three questions that we want to ask you today, Charlie, tonight, that I want to go over with you. We have a page on our website where people are going to ask anonymous questions. And so these aren't verbatim questions, but they're kind of because we had a few of them come in, and I just kind of paraphrased them, reworded them because they were kind of same theme. But the first question that I want to ask you tonight is kind of talking about Christian behavior. Um, and you actually did an episode on this on Pondering Christianity. Are bad Christians are bad Christians bad people?
Yeah.
But
Our
what
church
is
people,
it?
bad people.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our-
Does it disprove Christianity? Um, does it undermine Christianity? Can you speak to that about Christians who are behaving like they're supposed to, and what that does for our faith?
yeah. I think the first step to kind of looking at that question is to look at the underlying presumptions of the question, right? The foundation of the question would be, are Christians the representation of Christianity? Which obviously the answer is yes, but are they the ultimate representation of what Christianity should be? The answer is no. Um, because we are sinners, we need a savior, right? That's the whole point of Christianity. We're inherently just broken people, just like everybody else, looking to improve upon that lifestyle, and walk further in our relationship with Christ, and ultimately become more Christ-like. So no, I don't think it is to be expected. Let me say it this way: it is to be expected for you to run into bad people at church, and ultimately, that's like, do you run into sick people at the hospital? Of course you do. That's where they're supposed to be. So, now, am I saying that behavior is okay? Absolutely not. I think it is. I think it's upon us as a community, when you see that, to call it out and just say, "Hey, man, that's not the example that Christ wants us to have. That's not the approach we're supposed to have as a church, and we shouldn't be acting in that kind of fashion." So I would say that that's the simplest answer I could give for it.
Yeah. Well, and this can go beyond just what you see in the church today. People can use this with like throughout Christian history,
Yeah,
right?
I I was I've been reading The Logic of God by Ravi Zacharias, and he quotes a famous evangelist in there, and this is an excellent quote. And he says that there's five gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and the Christian, and most people will never read the first four. So bear that in mind, that people are not going to go to the Bible to validate whether or not this person, and more than likely you in this scenario, whoever's watching, if you're acting accordingly to what the Bible teaches, they're going to just look at you and say, that's Christianity.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm posting your link up there. I just posted the Pondering Christianity YouTube channel. If you guys want to
Oh,
go
nice.
over there,
Okay.
you can catch more videos with Charlie. I think it's to me it goes to show that they're. I mean, we're all going to have our own vision for what church should look like, for what Christians should look like, right? So that's
Yeah.
bound for, well, they're acting bad or they're acting bad, and we all have this different view of what Christians should be acting like. But if you see
Yeah.
someone like blatantly sinning or something like that, like it's going to just show, one, they're out of step with Jesus, and none of us are perfect.
Yeah.
Um,
Of course not.
but they're out of step. We get our own ideas of how we think God should be working in our lives and doing different things like that. Yet at the same time, I don't see Jesus walking away from the church. I don't see Jesus walking away from you or I. He promises to be with us forever.
Right.
And I got to think, looking at the scriptures and just seeing how Jesus dealt with difficult people, I can think of no one more difficult than Judas. And on the night of his betrayal, what was Jesus doing at dinner with those guys? If you have read in the Gospels, he's washing Judas's feet. He's having a meal with Judas, and he knows what Judas is going to do.
Yeah, he's killing him with kindness is what he's doing.
Yeah, and the one thing that I had always read over this, and I caught it within the last year or so, even Judas goes and he betrays him with a kiss. I mean, I would just be ready to deck the guy. And in that scene when Jesus is arrested, Judas kisses him. Peter pulls out a sword and chops off a dude's ear. And Jesus stops the whole thing, and he looks and he says to Judas, he's like, he calls him friend. He's like, "What did you come to do here, friend?" But it's a term of endearment. I think he's trying to give him one more shot. I think Jesus is always trying to give us one more shot in there. So to me, oh heck yeah, it's frustrating. I want to walk away. I want to have nothing to do with the church or Christianity. But I just don't see the one who I call Savior, Jesus. I don't see him walking away.
No, definitely not. And I mean, that's ultimately what relationships are, right? Is patience and forgiveness with one another. So, I mean, we have to be that way. If you're gonna have that kind of approach with any relationship in your life of basically saying, well, hey, once you mess up once, we're done. Then you're gonna find that you have no one left in your life because everyone's gonna eventually step on your toes at some point.
Yeah. Jason, man, good to see you. He said that I don't know if Gandhi said this or not. I'll read it to you, Charlie, in case you can't see it on the screen. Muhammad Gandhi mentioned that he loved Christ, Jesus, but he did not like the Christians because they were so unlike Christ. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a big deal because it can totally undermine what we're trying to accomplish. Like right now, as a church, as Freedom Church, what's our goal during COVID-19? I mean, we can serve and do a lot of different things. I think right now, our biggest deal is spreading hope. Like, how can we spread hope to people during this time? And, part of this conversation of spreading hope is, hey, how can I have deep roots in my faith? Is there solidness to my faith? And some of us are wondering and we're questioning right now, which is why I love these conversations. And so I want to be a church. I want to be ones that, hey, I got anxiety. I got questions. I've got doubts, but I'm also going to spread hope. And it's not based on something that's a feeling. It's more based on evidence, which kind of goes into our next question. This is an excellent question, and we're going to kind of hang out here. By the way, if anybody's here and you have a question related to what we're talking about, or you have a comment or idea, this is a conversation. And this is how you do conversations during COVID-19. Comment so we can see it. But then let's talk back and forth. If you have a question about God, science, faith, the Bible, and we're not touching on it, go ahead and drop it in the comments. And if we have time, we'll get to it. We'll really try to get to it. And like we've done before, we'll get to it on another conversation. But the question... one of the questions that came in is kind of this idea of dealing with an invisible God. And I can't, I can't grasp the idea of an invisible God. And as a pastor, I've heard this one a lot. I love your faith. I love Jesus, but I can't see him. I can't touch him. And how do you approach that with someone who is agnostic, atheistic, whatever, they just can't get over that hump?
Yeah. Well, like with every other question, right? You have to separate it into the two categories. There is the intellectual issues, and there's the emotional issues. And you have to start by asking someone, what do you mean by that? So when someone's asking that question, they don't always mean the same thing. For example, someone might say that when they're referring to the invisibleness, the hiddenness of God, that they're referring to, they want to feel him. They want to feel that presence, the burning in the bosom, as it were. They want to feel that. And then other people are actually referring to a physical presence. Why can't God be here on earth? Why can't he reveal himself to me? Why can't he this? Why can't he that kind of interact with me? And so ultimately, that's kind of where the discussion goes, is kind of starting to explore what exactly is the root of the issue. And in my experience, most people don't really know precisely the exact root of the issue. It's normally kind of a mixture of the intellectual and emotional issue of they just want a hug. Ultimately, they just want to feel God kind of wrap them up in his arms and give him that peace, right? And that's why it's such a good question for the anxiety, is they are corresponding to one another. And that's ultimately where our problem comes from when it comes to the hiddenness of God, is that we seek this relationship so deeply with him, yet we have such a hard time finding it on a level that we're looking for. So to me, it's, again, breaking down this question into, okay, let's attack this from an intellectual position first, to kind of bring them to that level of, okay, intellectually this kind of makes sense, but emotionally, where do we go from there? So the first point I want to make tonight when it comes to the hiddenness of God is a logical one. How would our realm contain God and his attributes? Now, I want you to really, really think about this for a second, people. God is omnipresent. He's omniscient, right? He has these characteristics and these traits that are very difficult to understand in this realm. How can someone be everywhere all the time? And so that's something that I would challenge you with, is saying God can't even be in this realm because this realm can't contain who God is, right? He's metaphysical, and so he can't bring himself down into this realm. Jesus is a different story. But that being said, I do not believe that earth, the physical plane that we live on, could contain God in his nature, and therefore that's why that separation is there. Now, will you ever get to feel that presence? 100%. When we all die and go to heaven, we will finally get to experience God's spiritual nature. And one of the things I'm studying in my channel and trying to become an expert in is near-death experiences. And hopefully we could talk about that sometime in the future. But one thing I do. Yeah, one of the things I want to bring up is when people die and experience heaven, one of the things that they mention is that everything in heaven seems to be translucent to a certain capacity, and that God's presence is this light that also is a feeling. You can feel it. It's all around you. It's this loving, metaphysical light that notably pierces everything. It pierces the grass, trees, walls. Everything that is in heaven is pierced by God's presence, and that makes him omnipresent. So that's a really interesting component, because obviously we have a physical realm and we have a spiritual realm, and in the spiritual realm these capacities are possible, whereas in the physical realm I don't necessarily think that they are, at least in the way that we know them, or in the way that we know this realm. God would need to add dimensions, and Hugh Ross talks about this, and it can get really deep, but basically just saying that we would need to add dimensions into our realm in order for God to enter our realm. So that's why when you go to heaven, you experience a whole new wave of dimensions. You can see better, hear better, smell better, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So ultimately referring to the fact that and most near-death experiences also report that this life feels like a dream compared to what they felt in heaven, the reality they felt in heaven. So, that same difference of like, wow, that was a dream, and you wake up and you're like, oh, this is reality. You're going to feel that way when you get to heaven, and it's going to be a sublime feeling. So that to me is one of the areas that is a lot of fun to look into, for that exact reason of like, I want to experience God. I want to experience that nature. I want to know what heaven's like. I want to know what that's going to give us. And I believe that near-death experiences hold a lot of evidence and a lot of intriguing stories that lead us on that path. And so something to look out in the future is as I continue to be able to research that a little bit further, I'd like to add a little more validity to that and theology behind it. There's a lot of question marks in that field. So,
Yeah.
but I do think it's a really good place to go to if you're looking to get a snapshot of what God's presence is like and what that ultimately feels like and how this realm couldn't even contain that if it wanted to. So just know that I think it's in our best interest that he's not here for right now. Trust me on that. Okay. Okay, so God, we can experience him, right, in this physical realm because he would also be immortal. He would never die. He is all that is life. He is living. So, that's another thing that we have to take into perspective is the obviously the perspective, if you will, of the questioner. So when someone says, "I wish God was here," well, what do you mean? Do you wish God was here during your lifetime? Do you wish God was here all the lifetime? And what would that look like if God lived every eon, every millennia here on Earth? That would be a crazy intimidating thing for Earth to try to withstand and even wrap our minds around.
So can I give you one situation? Maybe I don't. Just,
sure.
I mean,
sure.
because we could. There's probably what is the person asking that? What's behind that question? And it could be a whole bunch. But one was, if God wants a relationship with me. Like this person knew all the Bible, they knew all the verses and different things like that. And they said, if he wants a relationship with me so bad, is what you hear. Why can't he just show? Like, why can't he just show up? Like, why can't he just sit across the table from me and have a cup of coffee with me? Like, here I am, I'm here. That would be all I need, and then move forward. Like they wanted a physical appearance, just at least a poof, a something, versus this.
Yeah, totally. I would turn them to perhaps some of the reports coming out of the Middle East that a lot of the people who are in the Islamic culture are experiencing Jesus in their dreams in a very, very real dream, almost a vision, if you will. So he is still interacting on this plane. And it's being done in many different forms, primarily speaking of what we've documented, especially Lee Strobel wrote a great book on this, The Case for Miracles. It does an excellent job of speaking to how these miraculous interactions are still happening. Now, obviously, it leaves a lot of us with the question of like, well, where's my dream? Where's my vision? I just want one. God, can I just get one?
Yeah.
And I think that we have a lot of times we have to do a little bit of a soul check or a gut check on that of, and we do this all the time in relationships in our lives of like, well, I'm willing to come to the table and work it out with this person, but they need to come to the table too, or I'm ready to do it. And in reality, when that person comes to the table, you're really not ready to meet them unless they meet you on your criteria. So I think that there is a level of kind of self analysis that comes with that, but ultimately it is a difficult question to answer. So I'm not totally sure what criteria God's using to determine who he visits and who he doesn't visit.
Yeah.
Well,
and I would just go to say too, like, one, God does it. There's like some true-ish things in there. Like God does want a relationship with people desperately. I really believe he's pursuing people, but he has never promised that he's going to sit across the table from you. There's nowhere in Scripture, at least the God of Christianity has never promised, I'm going to show up at your house at some point in your life and make myself known. Nowhere has it ever promised. So, somewhere, that individual or other people who are like that. Well, if this is the God of Christianity, but I don't see him, so I'm going to walk away. If somebody told you that's who the God of Christianity was and you walked away, good, because that was not the God of Christianity. I would say go and explore the God of Christianity. He never promises that he's going to show up physically. Now, there's all these little tangents. That's one. Two, it would go back more to our previous conversation talking about Jesus and the resurrection when you and I talked after Easter. He actually did show up physically.
Yeah. That was going to be my next point.
2,000 years late to that party.
Yeah.
So go research the evidence on Jesus and the resurrection.
Right.
That's the physical evidence that you're looking for.
100%.
go look at that, because that was the promised one. That was the Messiah, the anointed one. If there was any promises of God showing up on earth, it was him. So that to me would be where I point to you. And then going back to what you're talking about, like just these kind of spiritual encounters and different things. I think it's James, and I don't have the address. Somebody here is watching it, can maybe look it up and put it in the comments. But he says, "Draw near to me, and I'll draw near to you." And if there's other verses where it's like, "If you seek me with all your heart, you'll find me." I think that's in Jeremiah 29. This idea that if I will let go of all my expectations of God and who he's supposed to be, if I just let it go, but I'm going to say, "Hey, God, I'm going to seek you." I believe over time, because I've seen this in my own life, but I've seen it in others. If I just abandon all of my, "God, you got to do X, Y, Z," and pass all my tests to make sure you're real, if I abandon that script, but I'm going to open myself up to "Hey, I'm going to try to seek who you are," over time, eventually, he will make himself known.
Yeah.
So, but that one, again, is more on the personal encounter with people. And that's where I think most of us are looking for. And I would say probably, if we were honest, if that person was honest, they're probably holding on to something. They're not going in with all of their heart.
Yeah. That would be the statement I would make, is that we all have some level of reservation that is preventing us from getting that relationship with Christ. I mean, and ultimately with God. It's like that's what, like I said earlier, it's a gut check of like, are you committing every single thing that you possibly can to this relationship with God and Christ? And I think that a lot of people, if they're being honest, would have to answer that as no.
Yeah. Well, and so much of us too, I would say, I'm going to guess, so much of us would put it on circumstances. And we could look at COVID-19 and say, well, the circumstances are not going on my favor, and it's starting to make me question God. But again, if you go and look at the God of Christianity, he's not about circumstances. You would look at Israel, who was enslaved for 400 years by Egypt. So for all they knew for generations was slavery. Where are you? Joseph, who was promised, like, he had this dream, right? But then he gets totally like thrown into prison, sold into slavery.
Yeah.
He
diverted his path.
Well, yeah, and then he helps those dudes out with their dreams. And he's like, "Hey, when you get out, remember me, get me out of prison." And they're like, "Oh yeah, we got you, dude." And then what? They totally forget about him. 2 years he's in prison. I'd be like, "God, where are you?"
Yeah.
So I think a lot of us might put it on my current circumstances and a time frame. Okay, I can deal with these negative circumstances for a certain amount of time, but God, if you don't come through, I don't know if you exist. Well, he never promises any of that.
Well, I can tell you that everybody does have a guaranteed appointment with God, and that's when you die.
Yeah, and by then he promises it's too late.
Yeah, so I think it's something to think about. Of as C.S. Lewis puts it, we've got one guarantee in this life, and that's death. So you're guaranteed to meet him. That's for sure.
Yeah. Jason, he put in there, I want to read this. He says, Andy Stanley, and this is a phenomenal series. If you haven't, look it up. It is so good. He did a series called Who Needs God, that talks about the gods people believe in that are not based on the Bible, but a lot of Christians grew up believing in. And Jason, I paraphrased that. I think he calls the one I was talking about boyfriend God. Some of us grew up believing in boyfriend God. Oh, he's there. I feel him. I have all these ooey gooey feelings. And then when he goes away and you don't have those feelings, where are you? Look at the Psalms. The Psalms we were talking about this in the pre-show. Where are you, God? How long? It just looks like you're not even doing anything. It looks like you're asleep, God. It still doesn't change truth. It still doesn't change that God's there. He's present. He's just not acting in the way that we think he should.
Yeah, and ultimately that's our version of what God should be doing, and he doesn't live inside of time. He just doesn't. So for him to show up one time in your life, it's the one important time he needs to be there to make sure that whatever happens happens, and then you'll see him again when you're dead. And then this life will seem like a bad night at a hotel to most people once they get to heaven.
Yeah.
Because it's eternity versus, for the average person, 85 years.
Well, let me ask you this question, Charlie. How many? Yeah. I'll ask you. I'll answer mine, and then I'll let you answer, so you can kind of think about it. How many times have you felt like you have encountered God, like in a very real way, in your life? Because I've had moments. Okay, I read the Bible or something, and okay, God, I felt like God spoke to me. But like for me, I turned 40 this year, and just off the cuff, I can think of probably maybe 5 moments in my life where maybe 5 out of 40 years where I was like totally felt like it was some of the most real moments in my life and God speaking to me. Maybe 5.
Yeah, man. That's a really good question. I would have to say perhaps 3, 2.
Yeah.
But I think that the less expectations I place on who God should be for me, and the more expectation I put on who I should be for God, the more I see him move in my life. Because I'm no longer, you see, we determine the lens at which we see God work, right? We put those lenses on our eyes. And I think that the more we spend time seeking God out, we open those lenses up of seeing, oh, he can move in a way that I never thought possible, or he can reach me in a way I never thought possible, or he's trying to get to me in a way I never thought possible. And I think that as you begin to open your eyes, right? Open my eyes, like the old hymn, right? Open my eyes. I think that you begin to see God moving more and more. I think, honestly, he moves in everyone's life that is seeking him out all the time. I just think that we're looking through such a tiny lens that we're missing it.
Yeah.
We're only seeing a portion of it.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think he's moving every day. That's what I preach. Be looking. We do this thing every Sunday at Freedom. Before church starts, we get together and we do like a pre-service huddle. But we shared what we call God sightings. Where'd you see God move in your life or somebody else's life? And so I'm trying to coach myself and everyone, be on the lookout. So often we are not. We're not looking for him. But what's interesting is every week we share something where we see God move in someone's life. But there's quite a bit where someone will answer like, I don't know if this is a God sighting or not. Like, I saw this happen. It was good. I'm going to attribute it to God. And I would say, hey, that is a great place to start. But I think he's moving, like you said, I think he's moving every day. We just, so often we are so busy, we miss it.
Yeah, I think so too. And oftentimes we're trying to tell God how he should move in our life, right? Like we're just like, God, give me this job. God, give me this opportunity. God, this is, and really when it's like, when we pray like, God, let your will be done with this particular thing, and then it doesn't pan out the way we want it to, we get so wrapped up in our emotions from that moment that we tend to not see that God was like, look, I shut that door. You asked for my will. That was my will. I don't want you to go down that way. That's not what I have for you. Yeah. And so I think that's why you have to seek God with all your heart and say thy will be done, in a sense, or not even in a sense, but just say thy will be done, because that's really the lens in which you're going to see the most actionable God in your life. Is give him the room he needs to work in order for those God-sized miracles and interactions to happen. When you try to put God on your shelf and you break in case of emergency and you try to pray to him and get this particular opportunity to go through, I think you're just going to continue to be disappointed, because you're trying to have God do, like, assist in guiding your life in the way that the way that it's supposed to go. And that's not how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to be assisting God in your life. Like
Yeah.
you're his assistant with your life. Like, and
exactly.
go ahead.
And just go back to Jesus, the perfect example of this on earth. Like there's one instance that it goes back to when he was in the garden when he gets arrested, but he gets told no by he is God, but he's also praying to the Father, and he says, if there's any other way, I don't want to go through with this. Take this cup from me, God. And he gets told no. And then he says, nope, not my will, but your will be done. And he prays that prayer 3 times, it says. 3 times, and he gets told no 3 times in a row. So, again, it's okay to bring all of this, God, where are you? Like, he can handle it. Like, he would love to have that conversation with you. But, like Jesus says, not my will. I'm going to give you everything here. I'm going to give you all I got. Here's all my heart. And that, I think, is what really, I'm just going to speak for myself. That's what trips me up. Because I think I have my own timetable and my own agenda on how God should move. I want to pray those prayers, and I do as best I can.
Well, that's the battle every day, isn't it, Mike? Is that we're consistently, as a Christian, we're consistently making a choice. It's not like you get saved and then the battle's over, right? Like it's like you get saved and the battle begins. You get up, and even Paul talks about this in Romans. You're going to get up, and every single day your spirit is going to battle your flesh. You're going to want to give up. You're going to want to have doubt. You're going to want to just walk away and be frustrated, and it's going to constantly be a battle. And that's ultimately, I mean, Jesus, you want to sit there and say, if I live the perfect life, then God's not going to have any hard times for me. Look at Jesus's life. I mean, he was the perfect man, and yet he still went through trials and tribulations. And I would also give you another thought to think about, which is God knows you, and I want you to really let this hit home. God knows you better than you know you. God knows what you're capable of. He knows your potential. He knows what you'll be best at. And really, that's all we're seeking in life, is we want to be the best that we can be. Well, when you submit yourself to God's will, most people don't like that because they think that they're signing up for something that they don't want. That's not what's happening. What's happening is God is going to say, look, I know what gifts I gave you. I'm going to put you right in the spot where you're maximizing your potential. So when you just submit yourself to that, you start to see, wow, like God's tapping into my full potential. This is amazing. But when you try to force your identity onto God, that's when you're going to start having issues.
Yeah. No, I think that's beautiful. It even kind of goes into the previous question of why people might even resist giving their all to God anyway, is because I saw how Christians acted. And I want no piece of that. And I don't blame people. I don't blame people if they're in that situation, but if they only knew who this God was and what he had in store. I like how you said that he wants to maximize the gifts.
Right.
Man, I love that.
And that's one of the beautiful things. One more thing, Mike, and that's one of the beautiful things that brings this such a sublime feeling to people going to heaven, is that you finally will know you like God knows you. You will not have that level of understanding until you've reached heaven and see, wow, I finally see this beautiful painting that I am. And that level of self-love, it's you're not obviously trying to be a narcissist, but you're trying to recognize the beauty in the creation that God has within you, and that ultimately allows you to have the confidence necessary to do what he's asking of you.
Yeah. Stephen asked a good question. I don't know if you can see it in the comments. It says, how do you pray thy will be done without it being a loophole? I've had people pray healing over me with lots of passion, but then they tag that on, seeming like they want an out for either a lack of faith or sin.
Okay. So let me kind of explore this question a little bit, Stephen, if you will. Thy will be done without it being a loophole. I've had people pray healing over me with lots of passion, but they tag that on, seeming like they want an out for either a lack of faith or sin. No, I think that what they're saying, Stephen, is that I mean, there's people all over the world who have adamant. I mean, Ravi Zacharias is a great example. This man has been an evangelical foundation his majority of the last 30 years and brought millions and millions of people to Christ through his apologetic message. But he's currently dying from cancer, and so as tragic as that is, many people are praying for him to recover, but they're also saying, "Thy will be done." It's not a loophole. What they're saying is that God has numbered our days, and how we leave this earth is not up to us. It's up to God ultimately. And so what they're saying is if it's your will to heal him, that would be awesome. But I also understand that his days are numbered, and that if this is the time for him to go, then it is his time to go. You have to remember that we are here, right? This is a trial period. According to the Christian worldview, this is a trial period where we are learning we're learning good from bad, where this is a learning time, and in order for us to reach what is truly life, which is life with God in heaven, and so on and so forth, et cetera, et cetera. But this is the trial period. So it doesn't always work out the way we want it to. So when someone says thy will be done, it's not a loophole. It's more so saying they're leaving room for God to do something against what they want.
Yeah. Stephen, I've probably prayed that prayer before, like, hey, God, if it's your will, do X, Y, Z or something like that. And I've never personally felt like I've had the gift of healing or anything like that, but I've prayed for healing for people before. Maybe if I had seen it or experienced before, I might be a little bit, I would say, have more faith in that area. Yet at the same time, so I just pray my heart, hey, I want healing for you. This is what I want for you. Do I have doubts? Yes, because I'm not a doctor, and I just don't know how God would do the supernatural and the natural. Like, it's just part of my journey.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, just knowing physical healing, this is all going in my head, probably like in a matter of a split second. I'm like, physical healing is not the ultimate goal in life. God's probably trying to use some of this to do some spiritual work in my heart, in your heart, and everything else. So there's part of me is like, God, your will be done. Like, it doesn't have to go in the physical. I'd rather have the spiritual. So yeah.
So Jacqueline posted a question that I'd really like to attack that if we can.
I go ahead and read it.
So she said, I've been very lost spiritually. What do you say to people that question whether Christianity is the true religion and all others are not? Many religions share the same ideals, stories, and message. Okay, Jacqueline, you are exactly the type of person I love talking to, so listen up. So the first thing I want to say to you is this. I'm going to answer this backwards. I'm going to answer the many religions share the same ideals, stories, and message. What are the best lies? Half-truths. And in Romans, right, according to the Christian worldview, we believe that God created everyone, right? God is the architect of man and human beings. And he's imparted upon us our consciousness, okay, which is our ability to know right from wrong, all right? Now, just because someone's not raised in the Christian faith, that doesn't mean they're separated from that consciousness. So that consciousness can still produce something that generates some goodness, right? Like you are an image of God. So you do have the ability to understand right from wrong at a fundamental level. Now, I believe Christianity is a refinement of that system. Okay, so that's how other religions seem true, but then there's something off when you really start to investigate them, right? Remember that the best lies are half-truths. Because they mix themselves up. Misinformation is the best way to kill information. Is just get everybody confused so nobody knows what the truth is. Okay, so that's the first part. The second part is, how do you know that Christianity is the true religion? Origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Okay, these are the 4 questions that you want to pose to any religious belief. Origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. And who provides the most coherent and consistent answer to them all? I will tell you that of all the religions, the only religion that provides a coherent coherent explanation as to our origins is the original Judaism approach, right? The God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, within his ability to create mankind, Genesis, the account of it. It was the only religion to say that all of this had a beginning, time, space, all of it had a beginning, right? And we've confirmed that through the Big Bang Theory. So that allows us to kind of remove all the rest of them. Buddhism, Hinduism, they don't answer that. They say that was created within this realm. So was all the mythologies. So that allows us to kind of remove those other belief systems. Now you're left with Christianity, or now you're left with basically all the belief systems that were built out of the Old Testament. So you have primarily the three of Judaism, which doesn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah and the Messiah is yet to come. And then you have Christianity, which believes Jesus was the Messiah and the last prophet and was the sacrifice and God come in the flesh. And then you have Islam, which then would claim that Muhammad was the last prophet, Jesus was merely in a line of prophets, and that our salvation comes through them. Now, the way that you can whittle those down is by investigating the historical basis of the claims, as well as seeing what actually aligns with what the Old Testament teaches. Now, Jesus fulfilled all the prophecies outlined in the Old Testament for what the Messiah was supposed to do. Now, if you look at this mathematically, it was something like 8 billion chance that he would do this accidentally. So the numbers are in that there was no way he could have accidentally done it. So Jesus fulfilled that. Not only that, Jesus prophesied about his death. He resurrected on the third day. We can also investigate the validity of the New Testament and the message that it teaches to see that it holds up against what Islam would say. The alternate theories that Islam would position about Jesus. They would claim that his resurrection didn't happen, which all the historical evidence does point to that. An excellent book, we talked about this on a previous stream, an excellent book to read is The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel that investigates the validity of the New Testament to ensure that what we get now is the exact same message that the disciples meant for us to get originally, okay? And then finally, I would bring you to current day. If you want to look at current evidences for God, you can look into something like the Kalam cosmological argument that tells us that everything that begins to exist has a cause. And in this particular situation, the creator, God, is who we're going to get to say that he has created the universe, that the universe exists, and we point this back to God. That's kind of a very, very simple way to look at that, along with the fine tuning argument that says that we have over 100 different parameters that tells us this universe was finely tuned. And I'm talking about if you took a measuring tape and you ran it all the way across the entire universe, if you moved that measurement on that measuring tape by 1 inch, think about how big a measuring tape that spans the entire universe. If you moved it by 1 inch on any one of those parameters, life would be gone. Everyone would be dead. Okay, so this is called the teleological or fine-tuning design argument of why we live here, why this makes sense. Okay, so I'd urge you to check that out. And then finally, I would say that future evidences would be near-death experiences. They point to a consistent and constant interaction with either heaven or hell. Both are very impactful experiences. And these are people coming from varying backgrounds, varying belief systems, varying ages, and varying cultures.
Yeah, Jacqueline, I just want to say I think it's fascinating discussion. Obviously, you could see Charlie, like, this is what he does. Like, you teed one up for him that he loves to have is a conversation, right? Like to talk about these things, to dialogue back and forth. And so, thank you for asking that question. And I see, if you don't mind, like, can we dialogue back and forth? You have another post here.
Yes, you got another good question.
This is great stuff. So thank you please, like, that's part of what we do. We want to be able to have real conversations, because in a lot of places you don't have a place where you can ask this, or at least have a good conversation. So I've had a hard time believing that the Bible itself isn't biased in some way, shape, or form, with it being written by man. Humanity's horrible, easily manipulated, especially back in those days. So Charlie, any thoughts on bias and just the fact that humans are prone to screwing up?
To screw it up 100%. I would ask you are you referring to a particular part of the Bible? Are you referring to the Old Testament, to the New Testament? If you're kind of wrapping the whole Bible up into this one consistent argument. I would urge you to spend a little time exploring it in its entirety, or at least checking out the legitimacy of it, because I think that a lot of times we have a tendency to say humanity is bad, man wrote the Bible, and therefore I can't trust it. Let me ask you this, Jacqueline. If in fact God exists, okay, then that means miracles are possible. Now, a book that is inspired by God and written by man would be a miracle, would it not? I'm assuming you would say yes. If no, we can go through that. But I'm assuming you would say yes. And so the Bible remaining inerrant is a miracle. I would put it on the list of miracles that God has done in our lifetime, rather, or in our existence on earth. And so the Bible has, yes, does it have the author's perspective involved in it? Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's why if you really want to get into the text, you have to study the context to really understand the text. You can't just take stuff out of context. And that's what happens with a lot of teachers who go into the Bible. They're looking for nitpicking verses that they can pull out and say, oh, see here, the Bible teaches this. Many times these people are just pulling stuff completely out of context, and it in no way, shape, or form does it reflect what the Bible's actually trying to teach people. And so I would really urge you to check out the Bible, and it hasn't been translated thousands of times. As a matter of fact, it's generally only translated one time from the original Greek into whatever language you're reading it in. So you can go back, you can check the original text, you can actually see what the original texts were. That's actually a part of what a lot of pastors in seminary do, is they learn Greek. They learn how to look up Greek so that they can understand what the original word's meaning and context was, so that then when they read these passages, they can actually see what the author was attempting to communicate. But you also need to remember that these are God-inspired, man-written. And so does the man get a little mixed in there? 100%. I would try to give you an analogy of like, God is the ice cream, man is the flavor. So, you're going to get vanilla ice cream, chocolate ice cream, Rocky Road, et cetera, but ultimately you're going to get ice cream at the end of the day, and that's the important part. And so I know there's holes with analogies, but that would be the one I would try to give you to say you're getting the meat and the potatoes of what's trying to be said there, and it is holding up to it.
Yeah. Jacqueline, a couple things, and I see the questions that are coming in too, so keep asking. Going back on just some of my thoughts, like Christianity, one, is based on a single event, and that's the resurrection. So you can look at all of the Bible and different things, and I personally believe it, but Christianity, the Christianity sparked the day Jesus rose from the grave, because when you read about the Gospels and what all those New Testament writers were writing about, when he died on the cross, their hope was gone. Peter denied him. I don't even know who he is because he's next on the chopping block. They're running scared. They're trying to put spices on him to anoint him for his burial, that he was already, he was buried and kind of anoint him. They thought it was done. They're trying to figure out what's next. And then Sunday came and he rose from the dead, and that changed everything. Then it was like, oh man, we got to look back at everything he said. Now we got to start writing this down and getting it out. So when Charlie's talking about can we trust the New Testament, that's where you go in and look at the history of these documents. They didn't know they were writing the Bible. They were passing it on to other people, saying, this is what we saw, this is what we heard. Eyewitnesses, like other eyewitnesses were there in Jerusalem who could verify the accounts. Like they named names in the scriptures and they wrote it dated back in a time when there were other eyewitnesses who could say, this is bunk, this is false, this is just crap. And the disciples, those original writers, they had no incentive to keep this going on, because if you learn about what happened to them, they all died. Pretty much all of them died brutal deaths. They had nothing to gain from any of this. They started with a very small crowd, but there was one event that it all hung on. That was the resurrection. So I would say go there. If you're really seeking it out, go with, did the resurrection happen?
Yeah.
If it didn't, go find something else. But if it did, then we got some stuff to deal with. And so that, to me, I would, that, because it's like so much. So like, where do I start? Where do I go? I would say start there. With Christianity. You asked what sect of Christianity we are. I don't know.
The kind that believes in the Bible.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm hanging everything on Jesus and the resurrection. And why do I believe the Bible? Because not because of some feeling. It is because if you look at the history of the Bible, when it originated, who wrote it, they were written by eyewitnesses to Jesus's life, his death, and his resurrection. There were other eyewitnesses who saw it, who could have debunked it. If there was a body, they could have shown it. And the thing was, there wasn't a body in there. And so to me, that's what I go and, I have lots of questions too, but that's where I go back to. I start there.
So, she had 2 more questions she fired off. She's given us a lot of good ones.
No, this is great. Hey, we're hitting about the 1 hour mark. We might, take some of these in and bring it into other interviews. Also, I would say some of the stuff that he talked about, Jacqueline, it's in that pinned comment. His YouTube channel, Pondering Christianity, hits on some of these too. So go ahead, Charlie.
I'll try to. Did you see the other? I lost the other one, but the only one I can see is the one where she's asking if Jewish people don't believe that Christ is the Son of God, why are they God's chosen people? Well, that's not totally true about all Jewish people. Obviously, there's a large portion of Jewish people that do believe Jesus Christ is the Messiah. I think that Judaism as a culture has abstained to some regard, but I don't think you could say that all Jews abstained from that. And then they were originally God's chosen people because they were just descendants of ultimately Abraham. So I would say that's the genealogical answer to that question. And then after Jesus Christ, Paul kind of speaks to this, that we're basically all becoming spiritually Jewish people. We all become God's chosen people through Christ's sacrifice. Why don't they? Because ultimately, I mean, if you want to look at it culturally, I remember what the other question was. It was interpretation. So I'll jump back to that. But ultimately, my reasoning as to why I think that the Jewish people were not happy about Jesus was because they thought the Messiah was coming to go to war and deliver them from the hands of the Roman culture and be this Messiah that was physically going to have a kingdom here on earth. And Jesus told them, to their dismay, my kingdom is not of this world. Now, if you had spent your whole life waiting for this Messiah to deliver you from the oppressors, you'd probably be pretty disappointed too. So ultimately, I think that it was just such a level of disappointment for a lot of the Jewish culture. And in addition to, there was a lot of political control within the Sanhedrin. So that's another thing to consider, is like, people love power, religion is power, and it definitely is abused. Yeah. In terms of interpretation, I'll try to quickly do this one, Mike.
I want to jump in on that too.
Yeah. Get it.
Interpretation, bias. Again, I'm going to go back to the resurrection, and is that true? Charlie, you're a hockey fan, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about hockey, you like the Lightning. I'm a St. Louis Blues fan. I am hardcore biased when it comes to Blues hockey. I can't wait to watch them play again. Now, when I say the Blues are the reigning Stanley Cup champions, now I'm biased, but does that change truth?
Right. No.
No, it's true. Now I'm more biased than anyone that I love the Blues, but they're not the Stanley Cup champions because I want them to be true. They're the Stanley Cup champions because it happened. So I'm just going to say up front, the guys were biased. I'm biased. But bias has nothing to do, when you boil it down. I mean, bias is something you got to look into, but when it comes to bias and truth, bias has no correlation to truth. Truth is truth. It is unbiased. So I would go back to, did that resurrection happen? Then heck, if it did, um, yeah, they got biased, but they're writing about these are the things that we saw and we heard.
Right, which obviously makes it difficult to say that they weren't biased, obviously, because I mean, at Jacqueline, ask yourself the question of like, if you were following a teacher that you really enjoyed, and this teacher was then killed, and you tragically went and hid, and then 3 days later you saw the teacher up and alive again. I mean, you would be psyched. You would be totally psyched about that. But obviously, other people would have a hard time wrapping their head around it. But Mike does make a really good point. You should really, and that's the part of Christianity you want to hold on to, is the part of Christianity that tells you, like, look, there's the evidence. Go look at it. Go explore it for yourself. We're not trying to tell you anything that you can't go investigate for yourself and verify for yourself.
Yeah, I like that.
Is we want people to go do the evidence themselves. Like my goal with my channel is to answer the questions, but also point you guys to my resources and point you guys to the areas that I'm investigating. I'm saying, like, look, like, if you don't believe me, here's the evidence. Frank Turek, he's an apologist who wrote I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist and Stealing from God. He has a really good quote I like to say to people of, either you're on a happiness quest or you're on a truth quest. And the difference there is that happiness will sometimes get you to truth, but when you find a truth you don't like, you're just gonna, I don't really like that part of Christianity, and that's how you get certain sects of Christianity, like, you know, Mormonism and Jehovah's Witnesses, who don't like parts of it, and so they decide to throw those parts out for whatever reasons. And then you have certain parts of Christianity that are like, no, these are true parts. You know, the hiddenness of God and these hard questions. You know, Christianity is suffering. It's persecution. It's the hard road, right? And so I think that ultimately when you search for truth, and that's why I'm a Christian, make no mistake about it. I'm not a Christian that's seeking truth. I'm a truth seeker that became a Christian because it is true.
Yeah. Going back to the and Jacqueline, I don't think we're going to have enough time to answer all these tonight. I mean, you're asking some phenomenal questions, and this is what these conversations are supposed to spark. So if you want, one, go to Charlie's page, comment on his videos if you want more. Two, when we do this again, you can follow the Freedom page, follow our Freedom page, and then you'll know when we're going to be doing these again to have more conversations. We usually do them on Thursday nights. I got a Bible here. I mean, you can get any Bible. I believe that, like, you know, we say this is God's word. It was written by man, inspired by God, and it gives us a glimpse of God's redemption story for humanity. Who is God? So I kind of, if I'm going to do an analogy, I picture it like the Bible's like a window, and we're looking out this window and we get a glimpse of who God is. But at my house, I got little kids, and there's fingerprints on the windows. So I can still see outside and get a glimpse of who God is, but I also have the beauty of there's life in my household and there's fingerprints on here. And so you get bits of fingerprints on here that still give me a view of who God is, but you see the humanity in here too. And I see that as a thing of beauty. You know, the guys who are writing this, they're not writing about their perfections. In fact, they're writing about their imperfections. But they're also talking about, what is this thing about? It's not about the writers. It's about this God and who he is in his perfection. So to me, I don't know if that really answers anything, but that's an analogy of how I see it. I see it as a window with some fingerprints on it, and I still get a perfect picture of who God is.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. I think that's what we're looking for. That we're looking for those footprints in the sand to follow. And eventually you'll find them. You'll eventually find that. She said, I don't even own a Bible anymore. Been burned bad by the church before. Need to fix that soon. Yeah, I think you should. I think that you should definitely kind of visit around. If you're in Los Alamos, I mean, obviously Mike and Freedom Church would be an excellent choice for you. I can personally endorse them. So I could tell you that they're going to preach the message, and I know that Mike's going to lead a church according to the truth of the Bible and ultimately the message of love that Christianity wants to teach. They're not one of those crazy churches that's excited about using the Bible as a gavel to judge people. So I'd highly recommend checking them out. But I don't know what city you're in, And obviously, churches aren't meeting in person right now, but definitely look for a community of people that you could be a part of to kind of explore and investigate it further. But, you're poking in the right areas. You're asking the right questions. Don't let anybody deter you from that. You're asking perfect questions. So just lean into that. And I think you're going to like what you find.
Yeah. And Jacqueline, we're not trying, for us, hopefully, like we're telling you what we believe, but certainly not going to force it down your throat. Say, oh, this is what you got to believe or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, we're just saying go investigate, like really go and check it out. I just dropped the link on there. It's you don't have a Bible, but there's a Bible app for your phone. It's the best one. And you can get a bunch of different translations. I like the NLT, in a New Living Translation, because I feel like I can understand that a little bit better. It reads a little bit clearer. If you have questions, again, like, you now know the Freedom page. So, and Charlie's page too. You can find it on. So reach out if you have questions. But we just love to dialogue about them, and so I really do appreciate not just you asking those questions. Everybody here tonight. This is fascinating.
That's a great one.
This I'm gonna have to like wind myself down to go to bed tonight because this is what we do. This is what we get geared up and talk about. So. Charlie, any closing thoughts, any takeaways?
Oh, man. No, I do, but I'd rant for another hour and a half. So ultimately, Jacqueline and everybody else out there, I'm sure there's some people sitting out there with their own questions. Lean into that. Lean into those doubts. Doubt is a good thing. Doubt is a good thing. As a matter of fact, I have a whiteboard video right now of why Christians need doubt that I need to finish up and get online, because I want Christians to lean into those questions, because they will deepen your understanding of what the Bible is trying to teach us. They will deepen your relationship with Christ. They will deepen your understanding of ultimately what God has for us and wants for us. And I think you'll really like what you find. But also, don't be dissuaded by some like pipe dream that's not real. Christianity is persecution. Christianity is the hard road. Christianity is you're going to get made fun of. And so the best thing you can do is educate yourself so that you have answers when people ask.
Yeah. Charlie, man, this is always fun. I love it.
Yeah, it's always a blast.
Yeah, you guys, thank you for hanging in there, jumping in not hanging in there, like having a conversation. That's what I love. Jumping in on the comments. You guys are amazing. This week, Sunday, 11 o'clock, join us live. I'm going to be talking about anxiety. I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable. I'm going to be talking about mine because I'm like in the middle of it. And I want to share some things that I'm working on, as well as some things to take some next steps to get better. I think it's going to help you. I think it's going to help your friends. So be on the live stream. Like, there's something about being live that Charlie may have to get up and go shut his door. I might have kids running in. Like, be on the live, engage, interact. Don't watch the replay. 11 o'clock Mountain Time this Sunday. It's going to be super helpful. I can't wait. Charlie, we're going to have to do this again. So you guys have a great night. I hope that don't go Joe Exotic on anybody. Get those peace levels that we talked about in the poll earlier. Get those up. And we'll see you guys on Sunday.